folks in the community of Michigan, Oswego, or Six Nations, where I currently live. Are there any folks here from Trillium Waldorf School tonight? I figured there's got to be some of you in here somewhere. Come on, come on. Okay, terrific. So several years ago, when my husband and I moved to the community where his father's family was from, I began talking to people about this notion of the indications of Rudolf Steiner via anthroposophy and Waldorf education. And coupled with some of the work that I had been doing in grad school and in my home community of Buffalo in the territory of the Onondaga, or the Seneca folks. And I began piecing these things together in terms of education. Education was very dear to me. This was before I had my oldest daughter, who's now 18 years old. And so I began thinking community gardening, school education, how do we put these things all together? And Waldorf seemed like a really good fit. And many of us have persevered. And now it's Kaluhiaze Goa, Jodalagant Goa Jiundawi Atapwa, or the Everlasting Tree School. We are currently in our 8th year as a full-fledged school, but more like 11 or 12 as people who had gathered around this notion over a decade ago. So at this school, one of the things that we immediately talked about and instituted was our nutrition program. And it's not so much a program as it is the way we do food. The way we do food at this school. So I also have done some work in eating psychology, which is that idea of why do we make the choices that we make around food, not just what is on our plate. And certainly we know that things like global colonization, intergenerational effects of colonization and trauma, not all, but some coming from the residential schools, of course. So thinking about all that, thinking, how do we then educate folks to basically do the opposite of what the residential schools did? If the residential schools were a deliberate way of dehumanizing people, or an education as a weapon, then how do we take that and turn it around and use education as the antidote? Use education as the way that we show our children love and reverse some of those effects of the things that happen in the residential schools. And one of them, of course, was nutritional abuse and neglect, deliberate nutritional abuse and neglect. So at this school, we have our way that we do food. It's part of the fabric of our curriculum, known as Johakwan going back to those original foods that come from the body of Mother Earth, corn, beans, and squash, often known as Three Sisters. And so what we did was we took some of the indications that they use in Waldorf schools, things like sharing food. And we thought, well, we have a tradition of sharing food. We had an agreement, a political agreement with our other Ungwehwe neighbors before Europeans arrived to this land. And we called it the Sewa Dogwatsala, or the dish with one spoon. That was the Haudenosaunee national food policy. Now, I recently learned by some of the work that I'm doing with the folks at Food Secure Canada that Canada is just now thinking about writing its own food policy. Well, the Haudenosaunee had a national food policy several centuries ago. This concept of the dish with one spoon. And what that was an agreement that says that lands and resources are to be held in common, and everything that comes from there is to be shared. So if we're all here in this room and my husband comes home with a deer, hasn't happened in a long time, but if he comes home with a deer from hunting, then we all have that. We all have that to share. It wasn't even really a second thought about it. And we know that that's not happening today. So what's the main thing that comes out of that? No one ever goes hungry. No one has to ever worry about where his or her next meal is coming from. So that was the Haudenosaunee national food policy, and also the Anishinaabe food policy. I'm not sure who else was in on that. So we had that a long time ago. So this is what we do at Skaluhiaze Goa. We share food every single day, every snack, every lunch, every time a meal is provided at the school. It's kind of held in common. The resources are held in common. We pay a minimal fee in lieu of a tuition, but a minimal fee to go towards the nutrition program. And we have a lot of traditional foods. So we also do certainly have this luxury at the school of kind of no one telling us what we can have and not have, I guess. It's kind of a luxury. So, for example, when we do our school soup every week, and students bring in a vegetable, for example, someone will make a broth. Now, Matt earlier mentioned Kaylee, someone who has come to the community, and her daughter comes to our school now. And the other day, I ran into her in the parking lot. She says, "Oh, I'm on broth this week." Because every week we have a parent is asked to provide the bone broth for soup. And I said, "Well, you know, that fundraiser we did a few weeks ago, I saved all the bones from that. You know, they're in the freezer." So she and I are out there, you know, picking away at some frozen turkey bones so that she can make broth that next day. And I thought, you don't see this too many places, right? There's so many rules and regulations, I know, as soon as you step off of the reserve when it comes to food. But I thought, what a fabulous thing. And I took a picture of her. It was just real cute, because if you know Kaylee, she's really cute, and she's pregnant now, so she's even cuter. And here she is pulling at some turkey bones, you know, just so that she could make broth for our kids for the next day. And it was really special. And I heard that Franny, one of our other daughters running around here, is at the school now. And I said, "Franny, how was the soup today?" And she said, "Oh, it was real good." So I think it was a big hit. So it's little things like that add up, that every single day we have somebody helping to implement how we do food at the school. Because it's tied to the language, it's tied to the land, it's certainly tied to the culture and every single thing that we do to be conscious around food. Some other things that we do at the school, when we first started, before we had a building that was gifted to us, we had yurts. Those are 2 classrooms. So we didn't have any heat or any running water, and we had an outdoor fire pit that we cooked some food on. So I went in one day and I took some corn flour and I showed the kids how to make corn tortillas. So they would roll them up, and I had a couple of tortilla presses, and we put them right on the grill over an open fire outside. And so that's something else really special that we've done at the school with the kids. So we always have the kids involved with the preparation of the food as much as we can. And of course, that builds that relationship because they see where their food is coming from. They don't just walk in and, you know, sit down in the cafeteria and some food is thrown at them and they don't know where it came from. They know exactly where their food comes from every single day. So that's something that is going very well and I'm really proud of at the school. Something else that we do, and I'm going to share this with you to exemplify the depth of the relationship of food that we teach the children. I'm going to share with you a couple of songs. And they're known as seed songs, and these are songs that are sung to the seeds before they're put in the ground in your hopes that they are going to grow to fruition, because it's always a gamble, right? Any of you that are growers, you never know what's going to happen, right? It's always, you have that faith and you have that trust and you have that hope that when you put those seeds in the ground that you're going to have that food come harvest time, that you're going to be able to save, preserve for your family so they have something to eat. And if you're doing it in a communal situation like a Longhouse Village, you didn't have to worry about it as much, but nowadays, you know, it's definitely a concern. So one of the things that we often do in the community, and which we teach the kids at the school, is these ancient seed songs, to remind them that they have an ancient relationship through the culture with the food. And that when they sing to the seeds, that hopefully that strengthens that relationship and also ensures that that food is going to grow for us. And when it does come harvest time, then we go back and de guano guardados, we say again our thanks to those foods. So I'm going to end with a couple of songs for you. And you don't have to learn the songs if you're going to plant. You can sing your own songs. You can sing any songs to the seeds to help develop and strengthen your relationship to the food. Normally it would be done with a small box turtle rattle or even just a horn rattle, but I didn't bring one. That's okay, you can just imagine it. So, Gana hione gana ha, Gana hione gana ha, Gana hione gana ha, Gana hione gana ha. And it simply just says, the seed is a good seed, the seed is a good seed. And the next one is, Yagohedio ne aksota yagoyanto. Yagohedio ne aksota yagoyanto. Guahyo yanerle, guahyo yanerle, guahyo yanerle, guahyo yanerle. And that says that the garden that my grandmother planted is a good garden. It's very good. It's very good. The garden that my grandmother planted is a good garden. It's very good. So I'm going to end with that. Etanigawanage dahon eto yawangoa. I forgot I was going to describe to you how that cornbread is made. So I'm going to do that really quickly. Maybe you can move this one up. So that particular cornbread is made with this type of corn. It's white flour corn. And it's a really beautiful, long process. So you'd have to start by taking the corn off of the cob. Then it needs to be boiled in a solution of hardwood ash, which creates the chemical reaction to help take those hard hulls off. Now for bread, you would rinse that, and then you would either pound it into flour or grind it into flour in your Cuisinart of choice today. And then you make that meal, and then it needs to be put together with boiling hot water again and formed into a wheel or a cake. And you could add things like beans to it, or berries, or nuts and seeds. And then once that's held together, then you need to put it back into boiling water and boil it for about a good 45 minutes. So that's a boiled cornbread, and the only ingredients in there were corn, beans, and water in that particular one. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
She took all my good stuff, and I have anything else to say.
My process, I believe it leads to the southern native tribes down to Mexico, like it's called nationalization.
They use lime.
They call it the white person name for that oil that causes the fly is palm oil, in case you ever heard wonder what palm oil is.
Well, Yahweh Scano Gawego, it's a Seneca expression meaning, I am thankful, Yahweh, Scano, that you are well, and at peace, and still awake. And Gawego means from me to all of you. So healthiness, peacefulness is at the core of how we greet one another. I believe it was at the core when we first greeted the French in 1535. We first greeted the Dutch in 1613, and when we first greeted the English in 1667. And we've been trying to live at peace ever since with our friends, our relatives. In fact, in our language, in the Seneca language, when they describe the people from the ship, they say that our younger brother. Now you got to understand, in diplomatic language, it's kind of a male language, and our cultural language is about females. So we called them our younger brother because they were inexperienced in how to live in this land. And we've tried to spend the last couple centuries trying to explain that. We forgot to explain to them how you should leave the land alone. That was the first thing. So Chandra mentioned the dish. I thought I brought a bell with me. Maybe I guess the dish is one spoon. So nature is a big dish from which we all take our bounty. We all have an equal right to what's in the dish, but we use this big spoon. I take what I have, she would take it, we all pass it around. We don't use any sharp instruments to reach into that dish, because we don't want to accidentally harm one another. But there's some rules about the dish. The first rule is you only take what you need to feed or keep your family healthy at this time right now. You don't hoard things for the future. And the second is that you always leave something in the dish for other people. All kinds of people, everybody. There was no such thing as a Mohawk deer or a Anishinaabe fish. It belongs, or we belong to all of that. And then the third rule is keep the dish clean. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. I'm sure most of you are familiar now with this symbol, the two-row wampum. Our ancestors weren't too creative in how they labeled things, but it's 2 rows so that it would be easy to understand. represents then the river of life. And we are all journeying down this river of life. And what this said, when we made this treaty with the Dutch in 1613, we will travel down this river of life as brothers or as equals. One path is the wake of the ship, the other path is the wake of our canoe. But what a lot of people don't realize is what our ancestors did is they linked these two things together. We tied the canoe to the ship, so not one is going to get ahead of the other. First we tied it with a rope, and then with an iron chain, and then eventually, when the British came, we made a silver chain to tie our peoples together. And the chains have symbolic meaning. They said that first we have to respect one another. And if we respect each other so well, we'll develop this trust. I'll trust what you say, you trust what I say, you can depend on each other. And if we have those two things, we will then enjoy perpetual friendship. What a great plan. But, as we know, it didn't quite work out that way. So the British are very sharp at coming up with symbols, nice polished silver, but to keep that pledge. Imagine how difficult it is for us now to have respect for the government when they come making another promise to us. Or how difficult it is for us to trust people because of what's happened. And this is why we don't have an ongoing friendship. But I think one of the problems is our leaders get stuck in the politics of it, and that allows us, the people, from people to people, to establish our own covenant chain. We can make this chain work, whether our governments want to or not, are not capable of doing that. But it starts, as you have with your dinner here, you've had it for many years, is this idea of respect. You're respecting us, you're respecting the food, you're respecting yourself, respecting everybody. Everybody's here to eat from that dish. I think that's good. And then if we were to spend more time, I think we could build trust between each other. But that means being honest about the past, and then also honest about where we're at right now. And it's okay to be confused about some of this stuff, but we have to be more honest to the concept of our ancestors had, that your ship and our canoe are linked together. And one wording on Truro, it says that they're supposed to be separate, kind of like forever. But our people have been going back and forth for a long time. And we have to start thinking about the space in the middle. This is where we're meeting tonight, between the ship and the canoe. A lot of our people are in the middle. And we have to think about that, because the river of life has become severely polluted. Right? We realize that. To the point where they don't recommend women who want to become pregnant, women who are pregnant, young children, to eat any fish from any body of water in Ontario. Think about that, any fish. You can look at the water, it looks clean, right? And you can get the salmon this big out of there, but it's not healthy. So rather than argue about who owns the land, about who did us wrong, there's a lot there to talk about. I think we have to start saying our two-real relationship is going to be about improving the water on the river of life, so that our children, all of our children, will have a better chance to live healthy lives. Because without that healthiness that Chandra talked about, there can be no peace. And if the food, and the air, the soil, and the water is affecting the way our children think, we don't have a prospect for this. Whenever our ancestors gathered, they performed a very simple ceremony. I'm going to show it very briefly. We use strings of wampum made out of clamshells from the Atlantic Ocean. They're white and they're purple. But the wampum is important because it captures the words of our ancestors, so we can remember what they had in mind for us. So with this first string of wampum, whenever we met people coming to our village, we'd stop them at the edge of the woods, they would make a fire, we'd send people out there to make sure that they're not too crazy, and then we would try to bring some sanity to them by saying, you just made an arduous journey coming from your place to our place, so we're going to dust you off. We're going to take a fan, dust your body off, and we're going to help restore your healthiness. But we also don't know what kind of trauma you may have suffered. And in order for us to see each other, we have to first wipe the tears that you're carrying in your eyes. Because like when you have grief, especially when you're suffering because of the loss of a loved one, and you're crying all the time, you can't see any hope. You don't see the future. You don't see the possibility of peace. So we take the softest deer cloth that we can find. Oh, one that was shot. My husband who was trying to do good. We take the softest deer hide and we would wipe your tears away so that you'll see, first of all, that here we are, that we care so much about you, that we're trying to elevate, uplift your mind. And for one day, we're going to push the dark clouds away, we're going to restore the sun, and you're going to feel hope. Then with the second string of wampum, we're going to take the softest feather we can find. In this case, an eagle feather. And with this eagle feather, we're going to clean out your ears, because trauma is like a dust that settles on you, settles in your eye, that's why you're crying.